I feel like now for me, it feels like a performative thing. It sounds really too weird to say because I don't, in terms of what's happening for Black History Month and all these voices that are suddenly being given an opportunity to talk. Like I don't really, I just see kind of Black History Month as, because of what happened this summer, it's kind of like companies going, look at all the stuff we've done, and then never changing. Like I feel like for me, so I guess Black History Month is talk, no change. I don't know how you feel about that, Daniel.
I unmuted myself, pardon me. I do agree, yeah. I think it is just, it's become a form of habit now, as just a muscle memory for companies, institutions everywhere, just to go, oh, Black History Month, let's just do a post, let's just do this. And I mean, certainly in my space, I can't speak for the wider space, but in my space, I'm actually seeing actions taking place, which is great. People taking this stuff seriously and looking at what they can actually do, which is encouraging. But it still speaks to exactly what you're saying there, Rochelle, about it just being this thing of, oh, by the way, Black people exist for a month. And then after that, it's, oh no, we're all, there is no such thing as color again. We're done. Christmas is coming. There wants to be a really clear expectation set on how progress and change is made. And that's not to say that, you know, everyone is trying and so on and so forth, but we're talking about several centuries of an issue being at the core of a culture, a society, a business, etc., of the way that these systems are built. And so naturally, of course, if we say in ideals, we want it changed yesterday, last year, you know, we want it changed immediately. But the reality is that it really can't. It's going to take time. I hate to be so honest about this because it sucks, but we're going to be here again in 4 years.
Yeah.
We're going to be here again in 4 years. This will all happen again. Now, the other side of it is that certainly in terms of my own work, in my own understanding, my privilege and place in all of not just racism, but any identifier, this sort of change within one individual takes a long time. For some people, it can be, you know, a week or a day, depending on where they're at. For some people, it's years of this work. And again, you don't reach an end. I'm continually on this journey. And so also then when we're looking at changing the way that businesses operate, that institutions work, changing cultures, we're looking at a really long process, recognizing that people are taking this work on in a very serious manner by not just going, hey, let's have a speaker come on and talk about Black history, as in Black people were just slaves and then, you know, they were oppressed for so long. Let's have people come in and actually give us positive representation of Black people who've actually made a change to the modern world. Let's put them into position of saying, well, actually, Black people weren't just slaves. Actually, Black people were doctors, scientists, mathematicians, philosophers, great thinkers, great people. And it feels ridiculous for us to say that, but that's actually where we have to, you know, go to in order to set the representation accordingly. And that's just one part of the bias that needs to be switched up in people's minds. Then we've got to talk about Black people's ability, Black people's emotions, Black people's experience, Black people's perspective, and really get people to come out of their own worldly experience and their own perspective, practicing self-awareness, emotional intelligence, emotional agility, empathy, sympathy, which then brings it up against problems with patriarchal stereotypes and patriarchal archetypes that govern businesses. It's so much work that needs to be done for this to change. And again, I say there are companies that I'm working with, companies that I'm not working with that I see are addressing this, they're aware of this and doing it, but it's so much work. And I absolutely support and I'm the cheerleader for companies who address this and take this on, because they're looking not just at, you know, hiring a couple of Black people here and there. They're looking at a complete change in how they operate, because that's what they're aware they need to do in order to make this problem go away. And it's something that we need to do as individuals as well as in institutions and businesses. It's not just just a simple case of lip service or going, well, I guess we need a couple more Black people up in here. It's way more than that, so much more than that.
start with, when it comes to self-reflection, you have to start with yourself first, not what other people want you to think, or not what you think other people should want you to think. You just sit down with yourself and write down how it feels to exist in a world where you are not human to some people. Like, and even if you're like on the other side, you have to sit down with yourself and reflect on the fact that sometimes you don't treat some people like humans because you don't think they are because of the color of their skin. And that's a really interesting thing to navigate. So I guess when it comes to self-reflection, I'm honestly just like, it's not, racism is the problem. And for you to even like have a conversation about that, you need to first address what you have been doing all this time to make somebody feel like they are not human. And it doesn't matter how many like, and you know, and the fact that sometimes I feel like, you know, when you're somebody in position of power who hires all these people of color and black people, invites them in, puts them in there, la la la, come in, you're welcome here, and all these people just fall apart because they don't have the support system to help them cope with an environment that has not changed. Like the group of people has changed, but the culture of racism has not changed. And that's how I feel about self-reflection. It's kind of like you need to reflect on the fact that you're not really changing anything. You're just inviting people into a war they never knew existed. I don't know how you feel.
I mean, I'm not. There's actually two things that I'm going to say to add on to everything you said there, because you said it all. One is going deeper than the what you've learned, why you've learned that, and where it came from. So we look at belief systems, and I recognize that at the end of the day, what it actually comes down to is a person's value of humanity. Do you value humanity or not? And that then seeps up through a person's beliefs, values, language, attitudes, actions, and so on. That's literally the way that I see it. Do you value humanity? Because if you're not able to get to that place within a person, or if they're not able to get there in themselves, then actually they've got, and it's annoying, they've got enough intellectual material to work from, whether it's true or peer reviewed or not. They've got enough psychological work to work from to justify their position. They've got so many things. So you've got to go beneath all of that stuff.
I was like, what more can black people give you? What more can black women give you? Because the research is there. The evidence in there. The books written. Everybody's written books from lots of different angles. Everything is what more. And I guess it sounds really negative. Like, I'm not usually such a negative person in terms of I'm always excited about life and excited about, but I'm finding myself like, this sucks. And yes, it's going to take a lot of work, but I don't feel like I'm going to be involved. Like, if my grandchildren or something asked me, I'd be like, you know what? I did 25 years of dealing with racism and challenging the system and things. Nothing changed. So I'm just gonna chill. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I mean, I absolutely feel you on that completely. And I've absolutely met, and namely, I like the fact that you say, you know, as a black woman, because black women have been upholding progress for centuries. It has been black women who've been doing this work for this long. So I feel you on that actually it's not even like you say, the racism and the sexism. It's the misogynoir, the internalized misogynoir, it's the colorism. Like I absolutely, I get it. And I guess that was part of my understanding my privilege, which was going, you know, I was tired too, because you're absolutely right. You feel like you're getting it from every angle. But when I recognized that a door that I could through, that other people could not walk through in order to go, right, I've got this opportunity to make change, I'm gonna make this change. So many, and again, it goes with that strong black woman trope, right? This idea that black women are strong and they can handle it and they can take it, which is killing black women as we speak all the damn time. Is to set that tone of going, no, black women, and again, it feels ridiculous to say it, black women are human too. They have their emotional stamina, they have their boundaries, they have their barriers, but we're constantly pushing it, and they internalize that push by thinking they need to do all this stuff. And if they're not doing this stuff, then they're not black woman enough. You know, they're not, you know, really black and all this nonsense. And I can't stand that either, because again, it puts people in these pigeonholes and in these spaces where there's this pressure to work hard, when all of the messages say, oh, if I don't work hard, then racism will prevail. If I don't do this, then bigots win. If I don't do that, we can see changes being made simply by setting this tone of go out there, live your life, let other people do the work. There are always going to be other people doing the work. I'm doing the work. You know, Georgina's doing the work. Let other people do that work. Lift them up, support them if you have the energy for that. Because that's what I do. I see so many other people doing this work, and I'm literally there, like sharing them, talking to them, quoting their work, referencing their work, and constantly being this place of going, I want to do this, so actually some people don't have to.
Like, for me, this is the first time I've heard a Black person talk for a very long time. So okay. I'm just like, this is nice. This is nice to talk to a real a Black person. Like, I'm in this interesting position where, like, I do not have an accent. I sound like this. My mom does my braids, so white people sometimes confuse my braids and think this is how my hair grows out of my head. And it's like, I feel like I'm in the position where, like, I acknowledge that there's some privileges that I have that, like, a darker skinned Black woman will not have, or she would be dehumanized if she's as vocal about how she feels, especially in meetings or things like that, because I've seen it happen. And at the same time, so I understand, like, yes, I do have some privileges, especially when you look at the colorism and then things like that, or how the world works. And I just feel like a performer. I feel like I'm a performer in somebody else's motivation. So, like, all this work of anti-racism and things like that, like, I feel like I have to be this happy smiley face that motivates boring privileged white people, not just white men, white people, to not be racist, to humanize me. And I just like, that sucks so much. And it's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter like what I look like or my personality or like my background in life, as long as there's like a Black mouth going, you are great, I'm so glad about your progress, I'm so like, oh, you know, the work needs to be done. That's all I am. To a person, like, I will never be good enough to be humanized by white people. I just won't. And I'm okay with that. Because there's differences. White people and then people who happen to be white. And it's like, there's a difference there. I'm just kind
of... Yeah. I started school in Accra, in Ghana. And again, race was nothing that was ever brought up. The moment I stepped foot in England, boom, I'm Black, straight away. And I was raised in England predominantly around white people. And so that became a real challenge. Then turning around to understanding all of the utter nonsense I had been taught about my race from the white people in my space. And so the whole rehumanizing yourself and trying not to play the dancing, happy, motivational person, which also hit me this year, because during all of the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor situation, I hit a low. I stopped. I lost every bit of motivation and positivity I had. It was gone, because what I was shown was my past of a collection of people on the internet, predominantly white, but honestly from other races as well, basically giving off that same nonsense rhetoric, that same ridiculous, ignorant, inhumane, unsympathetic, unempathetic rhetoric that I was just like, my God, it's literally like being back in my British childhood home. Well, not in my home. My home was great. It was in my community. I take my vision, and this is maybe part of me, right? Because I've always had this thing in my head of ridiculous dreams. You could call them pipe dreams, but just stupid ass dreams that I've always known are completely impossible, but for some reason they energize me. And it's having dreams that exist outside of my lifespan. And I think it's about, I guess the way I could frame it is leaving a legacy for me personally, right? saying leaving a legacy. I want to create a foundation that sets the tone that for some reason, even though I'm not going to be around and I may not see it come to fruition, sets the tone for a goal that is way bigger than me. And the reason I found that really helpful is because it humbles me. It takes the weight of the world off of my shoulders, because that's another burnout from early on. Our human brains are not designed to take on the weight of the world's problems. But of course, with the internet, with social media, we are bombarded with all of this stuff constantly, all the time. Now, bear in mind, to the listener, because I know you understand this, Rochelle, being any minority identity, being any marginalized identity, you don't need social media for that perspective to be weighed upon your minds, on your shoulders. Social media magnifies it, right? So it takes that work and that professional help to guide your mind through a place where you can find solidarity, you can set those boundaries in your head, be able to talk to yourself and understand that is not a problem that you need to deal with. And you get to choose when you deal with that. Now, setting the big goals in my head, yeah, it keeps me humble. It allows me that space and energy. So as controversial as this is, and I'm fully aware of this, is that it means every now and then I switch off. Because basically, at no point is the entire world asleep at the same time. I go to sleep, someone in America picks up the work. They go to sleep, someone in Korea picks up the work. They go to sleep, someone in Australia picks up the work. Because this is global, right? We're working all over the place. This is a invisible set of teamwork that's taking place all over. And again, and part of my work is teaching people how heavy this is, letting them understand, right? And of course, I do allow them their discomfort. And I do say, you're allowed to feel uncomfortable about this, because what they're going through is an identity crisis, right? That everyone can experience. And that is hard to go through. But nonetheless, they're held accountable to going through it. So they get to the other side and be like, damn, I did not realize that my words had such heavy impact, not just on Black people, but on everyone around me. Like, yes, hello, welcome to being socially aware. Welcome to be conscious. Like, welcome to it. It's something that I think everyone, certainly the listeners, need to understand, is they might think that the world's problems are on their shoulders in terms of, oh, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to make sure my partner's okay? How am I going to look after my mental well-being? How am I going to make sure I have a career progression? How am I going to make sure that all of my bills are paid? Oh my God, climate change is happening. Oh, this is such a problem. How do I make sure that even let's say, how do I make sure the far right doesn't take over everything? Every single one of us will have those concerns. But at the same time, on top of that, we are experiencing it in front of our face. It is happening to us every single day. And we'll see it online, we'll see it in person, we'll see it in the physical world. And it's a weight on top of all of the other problems that we face, which are just a human issue. They're not a white issue, they're a human issue, which means Black people also carry that, and the weight of experiencing all of these so-called invisible instances of disrespect, of microaggression, dehumanization. And actually, one thing I want the listener to understand here, which is actually in terms of language, is that no matter who it is, actually, the moment you use language to dehumanize a person on any level, call them an idiot, call them stupid, call them an animal of any sort, you've actually given permission to treat them accordingly. You have given yourself permission, and you may not realize you've done that. You call someone an idiot, you've just given yourself permission to treat them like an idiot. And now you're bullying. That's what you're doing, straight up. I guess I don't know what stage we're at, but I certainly would put a pin in everyone listening right now, look at language and understand how that impacts how they treat people, because it really, really makes a difference. And then what might open up is how abusive we are to everyone at the moment. Twitter is a mess. It's the scariest place on earth, I'll tell you.
I don't know if you remember your own first session. I remember waiting in the waiting room, crying, just holding in the tears, and then sitting in the room. And I spent most of it just crying and just bearing my heart out. And she was just she just listened and she saw me. And even when we look now, it's what can companies and people do now in terms of it's just shut up and listen. And if you are not the appropriate person for that person to feel heard, then you better find the person who will make sure that person feels heard. Because you spilling out and trying to support them is just going to make things worse. That's how I feel. I feel like if companies really want change and investment and stuff, start with the support systems that you offer all these people that you are onboarding and you are inviting over. Make sure that they have somebody who sees them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they tell you the people you have don't see them, then find somebody who will see them. Don't make all these justifications about why not. Because I remember, like, even in my darkest moments, like, I remember, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, like, you know, when your depression is like months, you lose months of your time. Like, you don't know what you were doing for months, and in 6 months, and you're like, what? But, like, after the counseling, like, I'm able to kind of, like, my depression, yes, happens, but my dips are, like, days. Not, like, months or like a year or so of my life that's gone. And it's like I feel like if there's a person, like a Black person, a person of color who's listening and they're like, oh my gosh, should I go to therapy to talk about this? I'm gonna say yes.
Yes. Yes, do it now.
Therapy, because it's the only place where you don't have to manage the other person's emotions. They are there for you and to listen to you and to just see you. And the confidence that came for me from having somebody who, when they saw me, they didn't see me as like the activist or the person who wins awards or this person who does this or that. They didn't, or like a big sister to somebody or somebody's like oldest daughter. They just saw me. And it was the first time that I felt like a whole person because somebody saw me as I was. And I think especially with what's going on, every Black person going through it right now deserves somebody who sees them.
You asked me about my first therapy session. My very first therapy session, honestly, I did it once. And this is important for everyone to understand, because therapy is not a profession where you could just go to anyone, sit down and share everything, right? You need to be in a situation. And actually, this is even in line with, even if it's a Black woman in front of you, you have a better chance of them seeing you, but that doesn't mean they absolutely will make you feel at home. If you feel from the first second, because it's the first therapist I saw, from the first moment, if you take a look at them and you go, something doesn't feel right about this, that ain't your therapist. Straight up, that is not your therapist. You need to be able to look at them, feel at home with them, feel like you could, talk about not the deepest, darkest, but just anything. And that's the tone they set for you, right? If they ain't it, they ain't it. And that needs to be understood in therapy, because I think people have gotten the wrong end of the stick where they've gone to a therapist, it hasn't worked out, and they've written off therapy altogether.
Yeah.
No, that was because the therapist was wrong, not because therapy is wrong. I really want to make that clear, because many people get therapy twisted and miss out because they got the wrong therapist. It's like eating one chocolate bar, not liking it, and wiping out every other chocolate option there is possible out there. No. So I just want to make that clear, because I didn't like my first therapist, so I got a different one. And yeah, they were great. And actually, it was a white gay man, and they were fantastic. And I felt really seen. So again, work with that. Yeah, really good.
So that was don't you like Brene Brown says she's the one was it called The Courage or something, but Brene Brown talks a lot about this,
Courage to Lead, that
one. She literally, like, you can't work your stuff out on your family and your friends because they won't leave you, because why would you want to ruin a rich relationship and friendship working with somebody whose job it is to do it? How have you set your boundaries? Like, how have you, like, after your coaching and your therapy, how have you started, like, setting your boundaries about how people take on your time? Because this is an activist zone. You are being thrown with, like, a whole civil rights movement, and, like, everybody wants your time. Everybody wants your opinion. Teach me. Hold my hand through racism.
Yeah.
How are you setting your boundaries?
So for me, it is, thank you. Yeah. So for me, I mean, it depends on what context. So for example, if I choose to have a conversation, I learned this the hard way. I look on the start there. I look at the language a person uses, and I look at how they, like, if I can, and sometimes it needs checking. I look into how they're putting themselves forward.
Yeah.
If I sense, and this is it, if I sense disingenuousness, any sort of insincerity, or even some obtuseness, I don't know if that's the right word, but being obtuse in their wording and in their approach, I am not even going to touch it. I'm leaving it there. And that requires obviously letting go of that egotistical, no, I'm right, and that I'm defending my humanity and I'm trying to make the world a better place. Let it go, because that person is going to waste every single ounce of all of that energy. They're going to waste it. And I learned that the hard way. You can be there for hours and all they want to do is waste your time. Unintentionally or intentionally, doesn't matter. That's what they're going to do. So that's one thing. So I actually carefully monitor and I look at what a person's saying, how they're saying it. And I will actually challenge. Sometimes I'm like, look, I'm sick, because this is also about conversation and being honest. I'm sensing this from you. I just want to make sure that's clear. And then I'll leave a comment and see how they come back. They don't address it, or they slap it away in such a way and so on. Then I'm like, okay, we can't have this conversation. I'm out. And I've saved myself so much rage, energy, anger, and sadness, right? Another thing I do is act, and this is it, because you're aware and I'm aware that there are people out there who blanketly, and it's a hard truth, but it's a truth, just don't want to learn.
No.
They just don't. They don't. And that gradients everything from people who are like hard centrists, who I just honestly, shut up, all of you, hard centrists, all the way over to far right people. I basically don't work with them. That is it. I don't give them my time. I don't give my energy. I will put material out. I will share things. I will put resources. So if anyone were at any point to change their mind, it's there. And as much as all the resources and work and studies, if you said, the books and everything is there, but I don't engage with them, because what it is exactly that. As you said earlier, it is me laying my humanity down on the line in front of a person who doesn't see it. That is emotional reliving of trauma. That is psychological reliving of trauma, physical reliving of trauma. I don't need that in my life. I don't have it. I set the boundaries. Only if a person comes to me actively wanting to learn and understand, then I give them the time. And I give, again, even then, I track how much time I'm giving them. Because there is also this line of, like you said, I've spent my life having to justify my existence. You're asking me of this for free. So I set up a course. Hey, you want to learn this stuff? Get on the course. It costs money. And if they're not going to invest, then I've saved myself time from giving information away for free. Because people out here really think that we're going to talk about our very center of existence, like it doesn't gaslight us a little bit and make us feel wildly uncomfortable, for free. No friend, no friend, absolutely not. You want this information? You want me to put myself through this? Show me you're invested. And it's not about I want to be rich off this. I need to get the clearest notification that you are invested in this. And the best way to invest is to literally put money down. Put money down that you're going to learn here. This was my initial complaint about diversity and inclusion, was that diversity, by definition, is simply a presence of difference, the variety of things. That's it. That's all it is. It's nothing else, right? So in a way, you could actually argue that you could have a company that's 99.9% white and 0.1% Pakistani or brown, and that's diversity. Done. There it is. And you can make that argument, right? Inclusion as well fell aside because people, again, thought that inclusion was just like literally at face value, just including someone in something. That's it. It's just going, right, you want to be part of this? Come and be part of this. And again, there was this assumption, and again, intentional or unintentional, doesn't matter, because this is what's happening, is there's this assumption that the system is fine because it's working. But what's not being addressed with a lens, perhaps you could argue, of there is no such thing as race or color, it's all socially constructed, is that therefore you don't need to change the system or structure or culture of your business, because any single person could walk through those doors and they will be absolutely psychologically safe and fine, which, as is being shown, is absolutely true. Inclusion just makes people go, oh, just bring them in and they'll be fine. Now, that was my initial problem with it. Now I'm connecting with more D&I experts, and actually, it isn't quite like that. I think maybe at first they weren't getting the right trainers on board, some of these companies at all. So with regards to systems, what people really need to understand here is that the systems are put in place that have literally persisted for hundreds of years by the elite, by people in power. I say the elite, people in power. And those systems have not changed, because they always worked for people in power. Now, as we progressed and modernized our civilization and societies, the underlying tone has been that you can fit into these spaces if you look, sound, and act like us. Yes. If you are of this side, if you are of this thing, which also came to that very problematic term of culture fit. We're like a family around here. Stop that immediately. Stop it.
I think systems will only accept the support that they think they need at that time, and the people that they have believe is possible. And it's like, that's why in my companies I want to work for are the ones that, like, culture, they want people who say how they feel. They don't want people who are just going to be there to please their bosses and make their and support the culture that's already existed. Like, and that's why I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge for systems right now, because they have been with these people who worked with them for years, who haven't changed. And yes, those people were progressive in that time, but like, they're not anymore. And how do you tell them that? How do you tell them that they are outdated? You get a facilitator who just says, oh, all you need to do to be more inclusive is bring more Black people on. That's it. And they're like, oh, that's easy. And the cycle continues.
Yeah, there's actually a real problem, and I've had this with people coming to work with me, and I'm actually glad they've said this to me, even though it's cut me out of work, because I've gone, wow, I'm so glad I did not go in there and do this workshop with them. Is they'll ask me to go in and say, oh, we understand you do social cohesion work and this anti-racism stuff. We'd love you to come in and do a talk. Can we just make sure that you position it carefully, because we don't want people to be upset? And I'm just like, no, I won't, because that's unfortunately meaning that what you want me to do is put bubble wrap and fluff around your team so that they can't be held accountable. I'm not going to stand there and point fingers and tell them off, but some of this work requires accountability. In fact, one of the core elements of true inclusion in a business is accountability of self and accountability to the person next to you, right? That's what it's about. If you have people who can't be held accountable to themselves with the material they're given, then they're not going to survive this.
And it's like, how did you kind of build your confidence about like standing up? Because I've already got mine. I've lived through war and apartheid, so I'm like, look, I've been through worse. Like, telling you you're racist is like
anything.
I will tell you now. But like, how did you kind of like build your confidence to be able to reject work, because you know that it will not land the way they need it to?
It went out of a scarcity mindset where I was like, if I don't get this job, I may not pay the bills and all this stuff, right? I went from there. And also it was to me, because the thing is, the reason I do this work, and you call it savior complex, whatever you want to call it, the reason I do this work is because I want to give every person of every identity equal opportunity, right? And it's not about trying to stop white people from doing this and stop white people from doing that so much in terms of, them wanting to have a job and get a career and all this stuff. No, that's not my intention at all. My intention is to make sure that there are the same opportunities for everyone to feel safe at work, to perform at work. And actually, we've not even hit the higher bar of that for everyone anyway. I think even white people have their own challenges in the workplace anyway. So that's my goal. So when I recognized that my workshops were too soft, I was like, I'm not serving the people I started this work to serve at all. I'm not. I'm really not. And that's because I am still in that mindset of being afraid of holding people accountable, because they might turn around and go, oh, I'm upset now. You think I'm racist. Yeah. So yeah, I switched it up. I was like, because also what would happen for the listener to understand, what would happen is, if you had a scenario where someone was upset because they thought they were being called racist, what happens then is all the focus of the conversation around inequality, around racism, bigotry, discrimination in the workplace, which is still a massive problem, turns all the focus to this one person's feelings. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And you can, but it's kind of like, I want to call it like the cover of the Pink Floyd album, where that light beam of focus heads to the prism and then it spans out into a rainbow. It's like, we can absolutely go to your feelings, but we're still going to set the tone that we're going to go through your feelings. right? Not like a battering ram,
Yes.
but just we're going to go through your feelings. We're going to go to your feelings, talk about them, but the intention is not to stay here.
No.
Because the reason you're experiencing this is you're about to have an awakening.
Yes.
So let the rainbow glow. Let it come out, because we ain't stopping here. This is not the final destination. This is a through route. And so what happens is someone could say something and I go, oh my God, that's so bad, I'm hurt. Now, what is not being established is that that person has said something. Now, do I hate that person or am I mad at that person? The truth is, actually, no, I'm not mad at that person. I'm mad at what they said. So actually, it's not them as a human being I'm mad at. It's the entity that's come out of them. Now, I could either intrinsically attach that thing that's come out of them to them, right, and make them the bad person, which puts them on the defense and completely destabilizes any healthy conversation. Or I could address the thing that they said and go, look, that thing you said, I just want to talk about that thing you said. I'm not saying it's you per se. I'm saying it's that thing you said. Tell me about that. Tell me just about that. You're able to open up a discourse that lets them, minimize the amount of defensive they feel, because they might already be a defensive person generally, which is their own, personal trauma, difficulty, challenge. But it minimizes it so that they can explain where they were coming from. Because actually racism, as you very well know, is something that is not exclusive to white people. No. And it's something that can be taken on, it can be internalized by any person. Structural, institutional racism, now we're talking about default members of society, and in the Western world, it's white people. Institutional racism, that's absolutely it. But when we're talking about name calling, microaggressions, etc., that's something that everyone can do. And I think actually, speaking of white people here who might be listening to this going, oh, but racism happens to white people too. Yeah, not institutionally, but on an individual level, yes, absolutely. That needs to be addressed too. But when we're talking about strategies, policies, laws, etc., not in terms of race, white people don't get impacted by that stuff.
It's like power. It's different. Like, okay, it sounds really weird, but this is how I kind of imagine it. Like, I know that it's different because if I don't know, a black person is racist to a white person, it's just a black person being disrespectful and rude and throwing their prejudices to that person. It's not going to really affect that white person's job prospects. It's not going to change that white person's ability to get anything. But like for me, when a white person is racist to me, it's like that person can like be racist and like stop me from getting a job because of my name. They can like, put me on dismissal because my hair is not appropriate. They've got so much power.
What we're saying in conclusion is obviously all of these experiences are real for you and I, but one of the core conclusions we can come to at the end is doing this work for free is a no. It's an absolute no. That's it. People out here who want to just go to their black friend and ask them to pour out their entire lineage and heritage and emotional trauma for free, stop that. Stop it. Don't do it. No. No, pay for it by a professional. Because actually the other part that we haven't touched on, which is good to point out, is that just because a person is black, that doesn't mean they are an expert on the experience of blackness.
No, it was nice to talk to somebody who understands what I mean without me having to like go into full detail for them. Which great that like there's somebody out there who is fighting for what's important and doing the work because we're tired.
It's been an honor talking to you, Rochelle. Thank you so much.